Welcome, everybody. Thank you for listening to the brand new Winifred Adams Show on the C-Suite Network. You have previously found us on Making Life Brighter Radio on Voice America, and now I'd like to introduce you to the brand new show on C-Suite Network. It's such a pleasure to be here, and it's nice to be with you again today. We have return guest, Major General Paul Vallely, and I'd like to welcome him back into this conversation again. Thank you so much, sir, for being here with us today.
Thank you, Winnie. Happy to be with you again.
It's nice to have you here. We had such a wonderful conversation about the Benghazi situation in the theater, and that is not resting yet because there is more coming up about that. Let's get right into that just to tie it together, shall we? What is it that you see happening regarding the Benghazi situation right now, sir?
Well, some of the items that we had investigated back with the Citizens Commission on Benghazi in 2014, the fact that there were assets available, intelligence we had in order to launch the rescue mission to save those 4 Americans. Now it's come to light that, in fact, the stand-down order did come from the Obama White House through Hillary Clinton at State Department, really challenging what they had said, that there wasn't intelligence, so we didn't have the assets to mount the rescue operation, when we in fact now, after the last year, have identified and have talked to many members of the armed forces who were on duty that day and that night during those 13 hours that testified that we did have assets. We had airplanes spinning up. We had special forces, special ops. We had ships, a sea in the Mediterranean with the Marine forces on them. And so basically Hillary Clinton, Secretary Panetta, and General Dempsey lied when they testified in front of Congress. So that comes in light of the investigation that's going on now with the Attorney General as well.
And so now Tom Fenton is taking that up, and it sounds to me like we're going to be seeing that played out over the summer. Is that correct?
I would think so, and I would hope so. Yeah, absolutely. We have to hold those senior members of the government at that time, including Obama and Hillary Clinton, negligence of duty and not protecting and not even mounting a rescue operation to save Americans abroad or wherever they may be. And we've always said in the armed forces, in the Army, never let a man behind. Basically, don't let an American person behind. That's what we mean by that. And we did. We left 4.
Yes, and that's a sad thing. And I know that I will be reaching out to Ty Wood's father and have him give closure on his portion of this as well. And so we'll have an ongoing dialogue if you're willing to come back and talk about that, sir. All right.
Yes, we're going to revisit the Benghazi betrayal, as we call it, again, and it's not going to go away because we really want to hold accountable those senior members of government that let those 4 Americans die without even attempting a rescue operation, and that's dereliction of duty. And by the way, lying in front of Congress at the Trey Gowdy hearing. So we have all of that down. Tom Fenton has it at Judicial Watch. So we'll have to wait and see what happens.
Very good. We'll continue that conversation and we'll let everyone know when we'll do just that. In the meantime, there's more on your plate. You've been very busy and you've just created an incredible press release on a new operation that you're joining forces with Steve Bannon on, and it's called Operation Nemesis. What is this, sir?
Well, what it is, basically, it's 2 parts, but it's primarily retribution to the Chinese Communist Party for spreading this disease and, in fact, covering it up for several weeks. We can go into a timeline, but we're holding the Chinese Communist Party responsible for the spread of this throughout the world. Now, whether it was accidentally released people at the laboratory in Wuhan, or was it made into a bio weapon by the Chinese Communist Party CCP, to be specific. And we know that the cover-up lasted about 2 to 3 weeks as thousands and thousands of Chinese migrated across the globe during that time, especially the Chinese Lunar Festival from January the 10th till February the 28th, where we had 40,000 Chinese traveling at that time. So we have a lot of facts now that we're gathering, but Operation Nemesis really is what we call a retaliation against the Chinese Communist Party for what they've inflicted on the world, and 50,000 now deaths in the United States from COVID-19.
And how do you plan to execute that? What does that entail?
Well, there's a number of things. I would be happy. I'm not sure you have the plan in front of you, but if you don't mind, I can go over a number of things on that particular.
Well, you were talking about identifying agents, correct? What are the agents? Who are the agents that you're identifying?
Well, these would be intentional agents of the Chinese Communist Party who would be placed in various areas to not only cover up the actions of the Chinese Communist Party, but also further, I guess, continue spy operations within the United States. Agents not only are at the universities, by the way, but they're also in the high-tech industry. They're also, we know, at the World Health Organization, at the United Nations. So the Chinese are very smart when it comes to infiltrating the United States with people on the ground, as they've done in Europe, as done in the Middle East. And I was trying to find that file for you if you don't have it.
Well, the people that you're actually discussing, you have proof that these people are all over now. You have the intel that you're trying to locate these folks here within the United States and around the world, and that's in operation already.
Well, no, exactly, and it has been for a decade, by the way. You see one of the individuals at Harvard, a professor who's just been indicted, but we've arrested many Chinese over just the last 5 years that have been spying in the United States, from the embassy in Washington, D.C., and spies in Silicon Valley, for example, in the high-tech industries there. And they've got them in on these what do they call it? The HNI, I can't remember the exact terminology, the visas.
Sir, you are looking in your campaign to educate the American public and actually label product coming from China with skull and crossbones, as well as a warning about the fact that these products may in fact be something that's, you know, has human body parts in it, or could. I mean, they talk about that a little bit, because we've been hearing all these stories. It's arresting. What do you know about that?
There's a lot of speculation out there at this time. I think Winnie, we're better off just dealing with the facts that we know, and then taking steps to ensure that the United States is always prepared for any kind of a bio attack, whether it's biochemical or something with a virus in it. As I said, we're looking now at the recent Iranian launch of a satellite that is placed in orbit over the United States, and that just occurred a few days ago. Now, we know the Chinese are working very carefully with Iran in the nuclear development programs. And what they tend to focus on right now is what we call the electronic magnetic pulse technology. We know they're testing, or at least looking to test, a low-yield nuclear weapon, which could be launched from a satellite, that basically would be electromagnetic pulse technology. And basically what that does, it doesn't kill people, but a low-yield nuclear attack deadens anything that has a computer, any kind of a system. For example, our electrical grid system is run by computers.
Correct.
So yes, if you had a low-level EMP attack, it would basically knock out the computers and any kind of airplanes, of vehicles. And this is all written up. Your listeners can refer to Dr. Peter Pry. They can Google him. He's our resident expert on that. And he's written extensively about it. But that's a threat out there that exists right now. The cartels are a threat, taking advantage now of our vulnerabilities with massive infusion of drugs into the United States again, along with sex trafficking. So that's the threat that's out there that we're looking at. But we're primarily concerned maybe about a cyber attack versus an EMP attack, which would basically attack our computers again. And we've seen instances where we have had the electrical grid system go down. For example, I think it was a year or two went down in southwest United States and northern Mexico. So we're watching that very carefully. Our military is on alert. We have our fleets out. We have different command and control headquarters. We have NORAD in Colorado Springs that's watching everything very carefully. So we're on alert because why? We're vulnerable right now. Mm-hmm. And our enemies or adversaries know that we're vulnerable, trying to recover our economy. So they put into a force too, to a degree, the continuation of government, the COG program, continuity of government. And they have bunkers located, for example, one is in Pennsylvania, where our political leaders would go from Washington, D.C., go there. Our military leaders would go out to NORAD headquarters in Colorado Springs, for example, in the mountain, as they call it out there. So we're prepared, but we've got to put America back to work. We've got to build our strength up again and ensure that nothing like this happens again to the United States, and catch us and make us very vulnerable to our adversaries.
Well, we certainly seem vulnerable at the moment, although I trust in the American spirit, sir. I trust in
absolutely
our faith. And I know from your position anyway, and seeing everything that I see and follow on social media, you certainly have quite a bit of support out there to the cause, as does the president. And let's talk for a minute about this QAnon movement. Who are these Q people?
Well, I just get reports from them, as you probably do too, as you see things that are publicized. But as best we know, it's a group of military intelligence people who retired and some active duty, located outside of Washington, D.C. Because what's happened, the president doesn't really have a lot of confidence or trust in this CIA. And we have seen why, because they've been so politically corrupted. And they don't possess great human intelligence capability anymore. That's been degraded for several decades now, where we've gone to more technical analysis, for example, cyber analysis. But you need people on the ground in Istanbul, in Beijing, in Seoul, and different places around the world to feed us information. Now we have military attaches, as you know, at all of our embassies throughout the world, and they're responsible for monitoring any development which would be adversarial in terms of arms or military threats against the United States. So that's shared by these military intelligence people. And the point is, the president trusts our military intelligence more than he does the CIA because of the accuracy that's being fed in from around the world into our military intelligence organizations.
I'm going to ask you kind of a personal question. I happen to have an affinity to that word accuracy, and I've been speaking about that for quite some time. What do you feel about the definition of accuracy from your point of view and what you've done? How valuable is that?
Well, accuracy in the intelligence business, which I've been in for a number of years, is basically trusting a source of information that may come from anywhere in the world, any city, Cairo, Istanbul, Paris, London. And so that's what human intelligence does out there. It validates these agents that are there cooperating with the United States, for example. And so we have a way to measure that trust or accuracy factor. And that's based on what they feed us, based on what comes true, what's validated. So it's a whole process the intelligence organizations use to validate or ensure accuracy of the information they're getting. And it's done in a very methodical way.
Well, sir, accuracy is going to be necessary upcoming to put this economy back together. And do you see that coming soon? Do you see that rolling out quickly?
Well, it's rolling out now. For example, in Montana, we're opening everything up basically that we can in low risk, no risk situations as far as the virus is concerned. The governors now are rolling out, except the idiot up in Michigan. She's in another world. But we got to be realistic with this. We cannot destroy America and our economy because of a virus. We didn't do it with the flu, for example, that killed 80,000 people, I think, last year. And of course, we're at the 50,000 person death toll from the COVID-19, as far as we know. But we also understand from reports that all those 50,000 didn't necessarily die because of COVID-19. They died of some other respiratory or pneumonia or something else that we're finding out. Very vulnerable, and a lot of people that smoked or had lung condition, for example. So we're going to find out a lot of those 50,000 really didn't die just because of COVID-19. And
yes.
So as we develop, vaccines, even using hydrochloroquine to a great advantage. But we also know, here's the other thing, at the Wuhan laboratory, the Chinese were developing simultaneously a vaccine to counter the COVID-19, but they would not share that with anybody. We asked some of our medical experts, requested they go into China to Wuhan and work with the Chinese. Guess what happened? Chinese said, no deal, you're not coming in here. And
can you demand that now that it's a worldwide?
Well, you can demand it, but the Chinese, they gotta let you into the country to do it. They're not going to do it.
Well, how much do you trust the vaccines that are being developed here?
Well, I look at the good positive reports from hydrochloroquine. Of course, the medical profession, the testing, and that's going to be very important as they develop vaccines against this virus and perhaps some others. But of course, the people that are doing the testing and doing the research, they say, well, it'll be 8 months, it'll be a year. There's a lot of risk adverse people that don't want to take a risk and say, hey, go back to work. Let's open up the stores again, and let's open up parks and swimming and boating and everything else. So President Trump has got a big challenge because he's got to decipher all of that. He's got to analyze it. And then he's got to say, this is our plan. And of course, he put out his 3-phase plan earlier this week. So we're unleashing now. We're putting Americans back to work as soon as possible, but it's going to take a while to recover. No doubt about that.
Well, to your point, sir, I had a conversation with William Cotel, and he was speaking about those counted numbers that now is certainly a fresh dialogue. It's a fresh narrative with everyone about that you could get in a car accident today and you're counted as a COVID patient tomorrow. And so it's, as he called it, death for dollars. And in this case also, he was saying that the hydroxychloroquine has been proven. Why they are now coming out and disparaging that is curious. But if it's proven and there's minor side effects, why not?
Well, they've proven it's like any kind of medicine, there's side effects. You can take Pepto-Bismol, you can take aspirin, you can take a number of things. You're going to have some side effects. It's how much risk you're going to assume to heal yourself. So from that standpoint, we've got to assume a little risk here as well. We don't live in a perfect world.
Yeah, I sort of agree with that point. It's worth the risk if you're going to die, and if you can't breathe and that helps, why not? But In the meantime, we wait for a vaccine. Now, what do you think about this vaccine with the potential of, nanotechnology in it?
Well, I don't know that much about that. I do know that ultraviolet, getting out in the sunlight, will cure people. And that's very important. When we open up the restaurants, they're advising now that ultraviolet light be put in that restaurant, spaced on the ceiling, with fans in it that spread the air around, and that dissipates the virus. So they're working on that kind of a thing right now, that we can have better ventilation and that we can, in fact, stave off. I mean, you can go anywhere. I mean, I've gone on 2 cruises the last 2 years, and I've got sick on both cruises. I had sepsis on the first cruise.
Oh, no.
I carried it for 12 days, yeah. And then last year on a Mediterranean cruise out of Spain, both my wife and I got sick from somebody that was carrying some kind of a cold or virus or whatever on the bus we were on. And so 2 days later, I came down with it. My wife came down with it 4 days later. And so that's the end of cruises for me. But we've taken a lot in our life, but things happen, we just don't know.
Life on Earth is a risk, but you've dealt with big risk in your lifetime, in your career. You've seen just about everything. Now, as you look at this particular theater, what is it that you see is the greatest threat to us right now?
The greatest threat in America is the socialism, the left wing, the Democrats in our system. A dysfunctional Congress is the biggest internal threat that we have right now. That's why this election this year is so critical for all of us, whether it's at the national level or state level or local government. We've got to ensure we could put good people in that have common sense and aren't playing the game of partisan politics once they get into office. And to me, that's our biggest vulnerability right now. And then, of course, south of the border, I talked about the 5 or 6 cartels working out of Sinaloa, the Golden Triangle down there, the external threats of Iran, external threats still of radical Islam in certain parts of the world. And so it takes a watchful eye to identify those threats and then come up with some way to terminate or neutralize them. That is a major challenge. And we're very good at that. Once we lock onto something, we're very good at analyzing it and taking the appropriate action, especially our military.
Well, what do you feel about this upcoming space program, too?
Well, a lot of technology in outer space right now. I just mentioned the Iran launch this week of a satellite that's orbiting across our country. Certainly weaponizing satellites. We have to watch for that, and that's the reason that the president stood up the Space Command, because we've got to have people that understand what space is all about, and that's as far as the settlements on the moon and maybe some other planets out there. That's all in the workings, but it's very important because outer space right now is a major threat to us.
Why is outer space a threat to us?
Because of the satellites they can launch.
Okay.
And what they can launch now from satellites, so you put the satellite up so it's orbiting, and then you can give a command to that satellite to launch a missile from it. A lot of people probably don't understand or know that, but that's weaponizing satellites, you see, rather than just orbiting around the world and testing a lot of things. Now it's the weaponizing of the satellites.
Do we agree to that as well as a nation, or should there be somewhere along the way that everyone agrees that that's just not how we conduct ourselves?
Well, you'll never get the Chinese to agree to it. You'll never get the Russians to agree to it. They'll continue to launch and develop their programs and foster countries like Iran, for example. Now, they're all waiting for Iran already has a nuclear capability. We know that. It's a matter of what they do with it.
Then we'd better be on top of our game on planet and off planet. Sir,
That's right. It's a good way to put it.
Do you do you have information that's crossed your desk over time about other races, aliens, and things like that?
Oh, I don't know any more about that than you do.
Okay, well, maybe we need some friendly ones out there, but
Yeah, I hope so. Hopefully they're all friendly aliens, because we have some unfriendly ones on planet Earth. I'll tell you that. We got enough to deal with on this planet.
it seems that we do, and I like to think of a sweeter world, and I know that you've had a career in a world that does not deal with that necessarily, but your conviction to your profession has been by oath, but also a passion. So what is the underlying passion that's driven you over time to do what you do?
Well, I think that all was generated and built during my 4 years at West Point, which our motto was duty, honor, country. And so that's always been something I've abided by for my entire career. And, you know, we add family onto that. And so duty, honor, and country to our country, but also to our family and our fellow Americans and fellow people on this earth. So it takes a good positive attitude, but you have to be on the leading edge of things now, technology-wise and so on. And I received an engineering degree at West Point. Of course, that helps me think a lot along engineering terms sometimes. And I took the first space program at West Point in 1961 when I was a senior. Yeah. Yeah. And it was rather interesting because they taught us about orbits and all that stuff. And in fact, my instructor for a lot of that was a former astronaut. Colonel Frank Borman was one of my instructors. So I've always liked that. I've always liked that particular discipline.
That's wonderful. You know, I'm just going to tell you that when I was 23 years old and graduated college, my first public speaking gig, as they say today, was in front of Ball Aerospace engineers. And from that, I ended up in a luncheon, don't ask me how, but I ended up in a luncheon of all the astronauts that had just gone out to, you know, fix the Hubble. And I just couldn't believe it. I sat there in awe that this is amazing. These people are incredible. They're so jolly and fun and intelligent. It was wonderful.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
We have a great America, and I think that we have a heart and soul to rebuild. So what do you think is the number one way for us to rebuild?
Number one, we've got to make sure that we start educating our students properly. They're being indoctrinated on these universities with left-wing socialist ideas. And as Charlie Kirk from Turning Point says, you know, as soon as you send your kids off to college, within about 90 days to 6 months, they're indoctrinated, and basically by all these left-wing professors on these universities, where they're there to learn a skill to get and to be able to get a job. And we've got to make sure that we have more people, more students in the engineering area, less in the social areas where they can't get a job. We need skilled, trained people. That's, to me, one of the major challenges in our country right now.
Skill trained people at the top of their
our
game.
Students, yep, absolutely. Bring them out, get a job, and not just 4 years and you can't get a job, and spending hundreds of thousands of dollars now at these universities.
Perhaps
so
we
that's
need
got to change.
More programs that might actually place people and the universities working with companies and corporations to place those people and ease them into some kind of career.
Into a career, that's exactly. And you don't need a 4-year education anymore.
No.
We have a community college here in Montana, and the skill level training they have there is just phenomenal, from manufacturing to tool making to running restaurants to chefs, all sorts of things in the farming area. So universities and schools need to be teaching our students the future skills that you're going to need to be successful. That's very important.
Well, sir, I feel that we've covered a lot of ground here, but let's go back to your Operation Nemesis before we close.
Sure.
What is it that you'd like people to know about that and act upon?
Well, they can read it on our website, standupamericaus.org. Operation Nemesis is on there, and they can see all of our recommendations to the president in banking and finance, Wall Street investment by the Chinese, and there's a number of actions that we've recommended to President Trump to take in retribution to the Chinese Communist Party. And, you know, they come in, they trade on our exchanges. We don't do a complete audit on the companies as we do our own companies. So they've been able to come in, steal a lot of our technology, take it back. So Operation Nemesis is really a way to make sure that the Chinese pay for what they've done, but also to ensure that they don't infiltrate America and try to ever degrade us again in any form or matter.
And so you feel this was definitely intentional?
Yes, the cover-up was, the spread was, but we don't know from the Wuhan whether some people got out and they mixed with the other people in Wuhan, and then it spread with all these movements out of Wuhan. Wuhan's 10 to 11 million people, and they had flights in and out, some 40,000 during the January-February timeframe, flying all over the place for this lunar festival back and forth and so on. And the Communist Party then, in my opinion, used it as a bioweapon to attack America and to bring us to our knees.
Sir, do you know anything about how the 5G plays into this?
Huawei, we're recommending to stay away from it right now, especially if it's tied to Huawei, the 5G. And Huawei's big time into England and other European countries right now. But we're looking at that from a national standpoint and ensuring that we do not become vulnerable again with our computer and computer technology and in the 5G area. So we're aware of it.
Thank you so much, sir. This is good closure yet again, and I look forward to speaking with you for further closure as we go forward, and perhaps again with Ty Wood's father. Thank you for being here, and thank you everybody for listening and for finding us here on the C-Suite Network. And you're listening to the Winifred Adams Show with a finger on the pulse. And we have Major General Paul Vallely as our guest today. Thank you, sir. Thank you for coming. We look forward to having you again.
Okay, thank you, Winnie. Bye-bye.